Welcome back to another Frugal Friday. If you missed last episode, check back to last Friday and you'll see where we started this new series with my wife Kim. In this episode, we're going to go ahead and jump back into the book that we started last week and start with chapter 1. They're fairly small chapters, so it shouldn't be too long, but Kim's going to go ahead and read us the chapter. Then we'll go ahead and talk about what we thought of the chapter and give you guys a chance to talk down below. All right, Kim, what do you got for us?
Okay, so again, we're jumping back into The Art of Frugal Hedonism by Annie Razor Rowland with Adam Grubb. And here is chapter 1. It's titled Create Your Own Normal. It's a wintry Tuesday morning, and Family R's alarm clock is going off. Mr. and Mrs. R reluctantly extricate themselves from their sleepy spooning and go rouse their 2 boys. They switch on the central heating, scramble through hot showers, electric shaves, and hair blow dries, and into freshly laundered clothes. They make coffee in the Nespresso machine, grab juice and milk from the refrigerator, and slosh it into glasses and over cereal. Mrs. R loads the work folders she optimistically brought home with her last night into the hatchback and heads off to the office. She stops for an extra takeaway coffee on the way because she had a sweaty and restless night until waking at 4 a.m. to realize that the electric blanket was still on. It's school holidays, and since Mr. R works weekends and has Tuesdays off, he packs the kids into the station wagon and they head out to the cinema to see the latest animation blockbuster. They're halfway there when they realize that the younger boy has left his favorite toy at home. To avoid tears, they drive back to get it, which starts the older boy calling his little brother a stupid baby. Mr. R creates a swift distraction by announcing that after the movie they'll go buy the new computer game the older boy has been talking about all week. To ensure peaceable snack consumption, each kid gets his own popcorn, fizzy drink, and candy for the movie. Mr. R isn't hungry but feels a bit glum that his one day off has been swallowed by childcare and buys himself an extra-large popcorn and an ice cream as consolation. After the movie, they go to the toy store as promised. But the store is out of stock of the game, so they drive across town to check if another store has it. It doesn't, so each of the kids gets to choose something else to make up for their disappointment. Mr. and Mrs. R had agreed that morning that there should be no takeaway lunches that day, given all the leftover potato salad and lamb roast from Friday night that needs eating. But by the time they leave the second toy store, the kids are pleading starvation, so they stop for pizza. The all-you-can-eat option costs hardly more than just ordering off the menu, so they choose that. Dad feels uncomfortably full by the time he gets up to pay, and the younger kids obviously had eyes bigger than his stomach because as the heating in the car starts to make things stuffy, he vomits up ice cream and chocolate sauce all over himself. By the time they reach home and get his soiled clothes into the washing machine, it's already late afternoon, and Mr. R realizes he hasn't even bought the new dog bed he'd meant to get to replace Fido's increasingly tatty-looking one. The kids watch a DVD in their room, and Mr. R puts the clothes through the dryer and stacks the dishwasher with the breakfast dishes. He then goes online to book the family's flights to Sydney for Mrs. R's sister's 40th on the weekend and waits for his wife to get home so he can head off to the gym, and also buy that dog bed on the way back. Mrs. R forgets her promise to come straight home and stops off for some shopping, picking up some kids' underwear multi-packs that are on special and accidentally blowing more than she's earned that week so far on a beautiful silk skirt. She's not sure when she would wear it and knows she needs to lose a little bit of weight for it to fit nicely, but it's just so gorgeous. Because of her late return, Mr. R takes off to the gym so hastily that he forgets his training shoes. He doesn't feel like turning back and decides to just buy a new pair on the way. He figures he probably deserves an upgrade anyway, given how well he's been sticking to his exercise schedule. After working out, he grabs an electrolyte drink and protein bar and heads home. Everyone is pretty tired, so they decide to order Thai takeaway for dinner, binning the rest of the lamb roast, crank the heating up, and settle in for a cozy evening of TV. First of all, I really like Australian writing. I like binning the rest of the lamb roast as opposed to tossing it in the garbage. And there's some other words in there that I find really captivating too. Okay, let's continue. Would you consider this day to be one of luxury? Family R certainly didn't feel like they were living the high life or even a particularly satisfying life on the day described. They were just trying to get through another day in a way that hundreds of millions of people would rate as normal. Yet 200 years ago, the amount of resources that each member of Family R consumed on this day would have been impossible for the average human to match, and challenging even for popes and kings. Looking just at energy use, even as recently as the 1950s, a family of a similar socioeconomic standing would have used less than half this amount on a typical day. Miraculously, those middle-class 1950s folks weren't spending their waking hours bemoaning this agonizing deprivation. They felt just as normal as Family R does today. In fact, there's American research suggesting that its 1950 citizens rated themselves as happier than its modern ones do. Such contrasts illustrate just how much our concepts of wealth and appropriate consumption are defined by comparing ourselves to those around us. Even those of us who least identify with the phrase keeping up with the Joneses can't help but measure ourselves against a hazy benchmark based on what our peers are doing and what popular and social media suggest people are doing. Consider again the kind of shifts in consumption we've highlighted above. The authors include a chart in here that we'll show you on the screen that does a comparison of what people in 1950 were consuming versus now. So the average house space per person in 1950 was 27 meters squared. Now it's 83 meters squared. So the houses are just getting bigger and bigger. You can read the rest of these comparisons, but a couple that sort of stick out to me would be the annual distance traveled in road vehicles per person. In 1950, it was 4,900 kilometers. Now it's 16,200 kilometers per person. So that's, a 4 times jump almost.
A little less with the pandemic, though.
True. I feel like we're getting back to our less traveling routes. And then when you look at the typical serving size of popcorn at the movies, in 1950 it was 3 cups, and now it's 16 cups. And I'm a pretty avid popcorn eater, but this is just a really solid visualization of just how portion sizes and consumption in general has dramatically increased.
I mean, just think of how big those popcorn jugs you now get at the movie theater. Like, somehow everybody's got theirs, so it doesn't feel bad that you're walking in with this giant tub of popcorn that you
like a
plan
5-gallon
to eat yourself,
bucket.
right? So it's just become the norm.
It has, yep.
And it ain't cheap.
Yeah. And, I think that's the thing with, we can talk about this more in a minute too, but I think that's the thing with consumption and different patterns of behavior. It's kind of like this cultural soup that we're all stewing in, right? And so right now we're all stewing in the soup of overconsumption, and it's normalized. It's all normalized behavior. So you do it without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I like that this book, in future chapters really breaks down taking these behaviors that you just thoughtlessly perform and do and making you really think about them and make intentional choices instead.
Great.
Okay, so consider again the kind of shifts in consumption we've highlighted above. Your pragmatic authors certainly don't bring them up here so that we can all lash ourselves into a lather of personal and cultural guilt. Far from it. We mention them because we think there's something marvelously liberating about acknowledging the total arbitrariness of what is considered normal. It essentially clears the slate for us to make up our own normal. Suddenly, we become free to do the tango on that slate, maneuvering ourselves brazenly wherever our frugal hedonist supersenses may lead us. Dearest reader, can you feel the exceedingly relative nature of things, allowing you to regard the whole notion of normal with more audacity, humor, and philosophical perspective? If so, then we're all together on the dance floor of infinite potential. It's time to boogie. What'd you think?
Wow, that was one expensive day.
Yeah.
I think it's easy sometimes just to spend on things that you think you need, or just that next item to get you through that day, and not add it all up as you go along, or see where you're got. And there's times where we're avid budgeters, and we go through and make sure that we spend, we put down every dollar that we spend before the month begins, and we'll go and put those numbers into the budget, and we'll still do that even though that we budget. So well, we might not do it to that level.
Yeah.
There'll be times where I'm going to work and I'll feel like I need a cookie or whatnot, or don't feel like making a lunch before I leave the house, and so I'll just pick up a $10 burger at lunchtime, or whatever it might be. So I wouldn't say that I'm not guilty of doing a lot of these things myself. Maybe not to that level of that day every day, but I don't think we definitely need to think that we're better than this either. We just need to realize that we're doing it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, to some of the points that you made, I think we're all kind of in this same boat, right? I mean, to different levels. Like you and I probably don't spend to the extent that family R spends, but we do spend. And depending on kind of where we're at and what we're doing, it makes more sense to spend certain ways. So if you don't have the time to make dinner because you've been working all day and you're exhausted and you just stopped by to mindlessly spend some money because it gave you a little endorphin boost, then yeah, you're going to want to order takeout, right? So it's finding ways to like intentionally carve out the space and the time, if you're able to do that, to be able to make home cooked meals, or to do the different things that maybe you need to do, like keep the heat down a little bit more and cozy up under blankets or something like that. But it's intentionally making those choices. So again, if you want to stop for coffee, but make sure that you're thinking about why you're stopping for coffee and make sure that you enjoy it. And I just see so much unintentional consumption in Family R's story. And that's the part that I think I'm most curious about, that I'd like to explore a little bit more, is this unintentional consumption, this mindless consuming that they do.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think if you can recognize that consuming and you can notice when you're doing that and cut that out, it's going to make getting to that financial independence that much easier, because as we've discussed, the two ways to get there is knowing how much you need to live on, and then how much you need invested to produce that much of money to live on. So if we can reduce that how much we need to live on number by not spending money on things that we're just mindlessly spending money on, that's going to get us there that much quicker, and we're still going to be able to have the same level of enjoyment once we get there. So I think these are going to be great points for us, and hopefully for you guys to be able to think about and implement into your lives. So
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah.
So did you have anything else you wanted to discuss about this, or is that good for that chapter?
I think that's good for that chapter. I am excited to kind of dive into the actual sort of suggestions and ideas that are presented in this book. So far, the last couple of weeks, we've just kind of set the stage for what this book is and where we're going, and we can kind of see why we're exploring these things. But I'm the kind of person who just wants to like get in there and get going. So the next chapter is the first of their 50-ish tips. So I'm excited to dive into that with you.
Well, give us a little sneak peek. What's the next chapter called?
Yes, it's one of my favorites. So chapter 2 is called Relish.
Oh, like ketchup and relish?
No, not like a hot dog condiment, but
okay.
But you could actually relish, and that would fit this chapter.
Yeah, I don't relish, so I'm good there. All right, well, happy Friday, everybody, and I hope you have a good weekend, and we will see you next Friday, and thanks for coming.
See you next week.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the like button for us. That really helps us out.